It's because of my flight, but anyway, it's an opportunity for explaining you the main idea. That is the creation from part of the Barcelona City Council of a resilience, the urban resilience department. In our experience, when we began with the development of the resilience, one of the problems was where to ask other cities about their development of the resilience. It was a very important problem, and we understood that really the cities invest in resilience, they act in resilience, but they frequently don't coordinate all the actions related to the resilience. So our development in this field, I think, is a pioneer. So our Department of Resilience have three branches, different branches. The first one is the center one. It's a combined line that is operative and strategical. This was the first line. I think this is the add value that we have respect to the other cities. And these lines combine the Barcelona Resilient Board. This is a board that concentrates 37 entities in 8 task force related to electricity, to energy, to water cycle, to underground construction, and many others, and develop an important group of projects dedicated to the reduction of the vulnerability of the city. So these projects are resumed here, and they try to combine all the steps inside in the plan for arrive from the first step to the update. So to complete all the cycle for the business continuity. So for guarantee that this crisis will not occur in the city, or if the crisis occur, so the plans are prepared for the reduction of this risk. Like a result of this Barcelona Resilient Board, we are trying to change this task force, to increment this task force for the development of a new resilience and climate change adaptation plan that will increase our experience that began from the point of view of the technologies, so the crisis originated by technologies, with the crisis originated by human factors and by the nature, so the environment. So this is a new conception that we will try to put together with this new plan. The other strategic line is the international cooperation. United Nations is the unique organization in the world that coordinates between all the cities and all the countries, all principles of the action in the resilience branch. So the United Nations have two main branches, one of the UNISDR that coordinate the policies, coordinate the strategics, and the UN Habitat Resilience, that is the operative line. So actually, in coordination with the City Council and with some enterprises that collaborate with these offices, the offices will implement it in the city of Barcelona, and we participate in their CRPP program that consolidate 10 cities like main cities for develop new plans of implementation of resilience. In this case, Barcelona is the unique city in Europe that collaborate with this CRPP plan. Maybe Dan Luis will explain this idea. And the other line is the operative one, is dedicated to the control in the city of all the incidences and all the emergency situation. In the city, we have 3 control rooms, one dedicated to the transportation, the other one is the policies and fire department, and the rest of services are controlled through this control room that we have in the urban habitat department. So the new investment in this office, the update of all the infrastructure of this office we are developing in collaboration with GDF Suez, and this is one of the motives of my flight today. And I think it's a very important project for consolidate new technologies in the treatment of the situations of the city. And then the integration of the city information and maps related to create a basis, different layers that can communicate each other, all the incidences in the public space and all the emergency for have a more quickly response from the point of the fire department, and other services that are not involved in the situation, in the crisis situation, etc. So this is the main idea. This is the global idea. My presentation was more description of each of these lines, of each of these actions, but I think the main idea, I have explained it now. Anyway, this is the operative line. This is the integration of city information maps, the offline information and online information. Offline is for accumulate the smart city planning, the maps of the city, and the online information is for the treatment of the incidences, for the faster communication to all the services involved. These are the objectives, the projects under development related to this branch. These are all the control rooms in the city that will be coordinated by this global project of mapping of the infrastructures. So these are the different control rooms of all the services, the railway, the roads, etc. 28 of these centers. These are all the maps that we have of the different services in the city. We are putting all these maps together for explode all the information. These maps of telecommunication, electricity, water cycle, fuel, etc. Transportation networks. So the combined line, this is the map of all the projects we developed. From this, and this is the task force that we concentrated for collaborate in the development of these projects. This is the main graph of this task force. You can see the state of the situation. 72 professionals from 77 entities and 40 improvement projects. And this is we are transforming this collaboration system with other services like urban planning, social services, etc. And we will put together some of the existing groups. So we are transforming this system that was originated in the technological way for the implementation of the climate change plan, climate change and resilience plan. These are the state of all the projects. We have 8 projects communicated and finished, and then 3 projects completed, and 11 projects that are developed more than 70%. And these are the state of different projects. I will not explain. So the strategic line include the resilience and climate change adaptation plan and the international cooperation. Related to the international cooperation, we have the collaboration with the implementation of UN Habitat Resilience Office. These are the enterprises that collaborate in this plan. With UNISDR, we are part of the steering committee of Make Your City Resilient campaign. And we have another collaboration, like, for example, the City Protocol Society. I will explain there. This is the transforming of the actual situation for the future one. It was the beginning of our process in the Bonn Global Forum for Urban Resilience and Adaptation, when we discovered that we can add value to the other cities in the combination of all the resilience related to not just the infrastructure and the other services. There was the signature of Joan Clos, Executive Director of UN Habitat and the Mayor of the City of Barcelona, for the implementation of these offices in Barcelona, and the rest of cities that are involved in the CRPP program. This is the scheme of the combination of all the stakeholders that we have to involve in this process. With these actors, we configured a platform that is Orbis, Urban Resilient Board of Infrastructure and Services. We gave this platform to United Nations, And I think in the future of United Nations, it will be the base platform for the collaboration between the cities. So actually, it's not a platform of the City Council, and it's a platform of United Nations, but I think it's part of our collaboration. This is the certificates of Barcelona, like a role model for infrastructures and services, and like a member of the steering committee of the campaign. The inclusion of all this process related to the urban resilience inside the city protocol, the City Protocol Society was found some weeks ago, and I think one of the branches of the city protocol is, I think no, it's a real. It's a reality that one of the branches of city protocol, of the first branches, is the resilience. So I invite to collaborate to all the entities and all the enterprises that are working in this field together for implement the city protocol contents. It seems the city protocol is related to the understanding between cities with a global terminology. So I think it's a very good thing, because for collaborate and for sharing experiences between the cities, it's very important to talk in the same language. And this is all the information.
I'm not sure if this microphone is on, but we have time for just a couple of questions for Manuel, if there's anyone who would like to take the opportunity before he hopefully doesn't miss his flight. Manuel, I was going to ask you very quickly what the catalyst was for this work, because we've been talking that very few cities have taken these kinds of steps so far to really build this. What was the spark to get this going?
I think each city has its own situation. In our case, it was because we had many crises in a short period of time, and we were obligated to the creation of a resilient board for treat the situation. Mm-hmm. But maybe our experience, like Frederick Kringrup from Virginia Tech University, was thinking about how to extrapolate the situation of Barcelona to the other cities, because each city has its own situation. So how to reproduce the model to other cities is not immediately. Each city has their own problem, but the model, I think, is very easy for collaborate with other institutions like universities and like private enterprises. So the model, like a methodology, I think is very good, but the origin of this situation, how to implement, how in other cities, we have to analyze the situation of other cities, because if not interesting for the rest of cities, so it's impossible to implement it.
And what has been the biggest challenge in getting this? Because this is a huge coordination task at the very least. What's been the most difficult part of getting this process going?
The beginning. Yes, the beginning, because at the beginning of our project, we didn't know how to do it. So we began working in the implementation of the project, but when the project finished, you have to communicate to the rest of stakeholders that can be involved in the crisis situation. So at the beginning, we didn't know how to do it. We did it. And then if the situation around the crisis changed with the time, you have to update this process, because maybe in 1 or 2 years, the conditions are different, and the risk is higher or is lower. So you need to update. So all this procediment that I think is the procediment that we can apply in other cities, we built working. Mm-hmm. So I think this is the more important part. Mm-hmm. And yes, was the first part for implement the model.
Great. No, don't miss your flight. Thank you very much for the time today.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry.
Nice to have you. Next up, I'd like to welcome Dan Lewis onto stage. He's the Chief of the Urban Risk Reduction Unit within UN Habitat, currently based in Kenya, but I'm told migrating to move to Barcelona. He's leading the development of a program aimed at designing new standards for urban resilience, building on his related disaster and conflict work at the agency over the past decade. And he's going to tell us a bit more about reducing ambiguity in urban resilience and making the case for why more cities and regions should be focusing on this. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, let me just get the technology down here. All right, good afternoon, everybody. interesting introduction by James, which I think leaves no doubt in most people's minds that changing a focus onto resilience as a means of reducing loss and loss of life and loss of assets and maintaining continuity are important issues. And listening to Manuel describe our program, I'm thinking I might be able to be shorter than I had originally planned. But principle is that I wanted to focus rather than on the technical aspects of the program, a couple of the rationales for this program. Over the years, I've had many conversations with many peoples in many cities related to the issue of reducing risk and building resilience. And over those years, I've come across dozens and dozens of different resilience strategies that people have defined for themselves, or organizations or networks have defined for themselves, and they focus on one thing or another. However, what's clear in the global world to us is that there isn't a sense of a common purpose with a common approach to a systems-based approach to resilience in cities. We have climate change, we have infrastructure, we have transportation resilience, we have resilience business continuity programming, all of those sorts of things, but nothing that really holds them together. And so there was a sense of ambiguity when we began this process that we set out to try to reduce, and that's one of the areas that I'd like to talk about. The second is that increasingly, over the last couple of years since we initiated this discussion, the range and plethora of partners coming from private sector, coming from industry, coming from academia, are increasingly interested in looking at more robust, more systemic approaches to resilience in cities and wanting to contribute and be a part of this and bring their expertise in various different fields to the program. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, introduce a new concept that will build on what Manuel mentioned about our resilience profiling program. So, reducing ambiguity. First thing is have a definition that you can live with. And for us, after a lot of soul searching, this is the definition that we came up with, and we don't deter from this. Everything that we do fits under this kind of framework definition. Urban systems and plausible hazards are the two key factors in this definition for cities. A couple of value principles. The first two, loss of life and loss and damage to assets, are the value principles for most risk reduction programming around the world. What we see missing in a lot of the work that we do, both within the UN and outside the UN, is the whole continuity process, the continuity of function of cities, the continuity of processes that take place in cities. And consequently, what we're trying to do then is to build the widest potential array of hazards that we can test that would plausibly impact the cities that we work on. And we work those across common features of any human settlement: organization, the spatial distribution, the physical or built environment, and the functions of cities. This is common whether the city is a village in the central part of Sri Lanka, or it's Tehran with 23,000 population, which is one of our partner cities, or it's Tehran with 11 million people, and a vastly different array of hazards that impact it. So this is the framework under which we are developing, the broad framework under which we are developing a set of tools, a set of guidelines, a set of indices that will ultimately inform the standards that we try to promote at the conclusion of our research and development and tool development programming. Sorry. Again, key feature here is reducing ambiguity, increasing certainty. Why do we do that? The billions of dollars, you heard the numbers James mentioned earlier, that are lost through disasters over the last decades, all have to be reinvested. And a lot of our partners are saying, well, hang on a minute. We need to think about this a little bit more. Building back better doesn't quite do it. It's not enough. Building back elsewhere might be enough in some cases, but we need to think through a little bit more of the certainty of investment in reconstruction and in building resilience. Just a note on the catalyst. It's a sad fact of life that interest in building resilience is generally considerably higher following a disaster than it is before one. And in many of the cities that we work, the highest priority, as Manuel said, arises as a result of a range of different crises. Multiple hazards, we talked about already. The consideration of withstanding and bouncing back is looking at issues like resistance and elasticity of systems, and trying to calculate and calibrate the degree to which city systems can do this. And obviously the final principle is what we develop has to be useful everywhere. It has to be useful in Balangota in Sri Lanka, and it has to be useful in Los Angeles or anywhere else. So it's adaptable. The framework is adaptable. Okay, this is just this is an array of target institutions and potential users that's arisen out of the work that we've already done in developing our partnerships and programming. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Many of you are already from the private sector. These are figures that you already know. I'll just say a little bit about Donovan and some of these dollars spent versus dollars saved. They're loose targets. They're used as a rule of thumb. And I've never seen any evidence of this, clear evidence, but it's a real figure depending on the city and the context in which the disasters are. The bottom, this is information that was drawn out of the World Bank, and these are serious numbers. Property loss is 20 times larger for companies with weak risk management practices. And sometimes where the best cases and best case studies are of risk management practices, we see 7 times less loss due to natural disasters. What are the benefits? This is what we're talking to our business partners about. Credible commitment and investment, opportunities to apply local strategies. The stuff that Manuel talked about right now is not applicable in Balangota or in the Philippines at the moment, but eventually it will be. And the lessons that they learned and the process they underwent to get to where they are today, which is far ahead of many cities, has real added value, both for the private sector partners and business we work with, but also for the agencies and the humanitarian community we work with as well. Public-private partnerships with the United Nations. It's a new area of work that's increasing in strength, increasing in popularity, but neither know well how to work together. And it's a slow and trust-building experience, but more and more and more, we're relying on our partners in industry, primarily because of the distribution of ownership of assets. Most cities in the world, another rule of thumb, 80% of the assets of cities around the world are owned by people like you and me and corporations, and they're not owned by government. Roughly 20% of the assets in a city like Barcelona are actually public owned. Okay, specific ways of engaging with the private sector, with other partners, working with the program to develop these tools, to develop these methodologies, are advising the program staff, us, contributing to the objectives, leveraging knowledge, expertise, and resources, dissemination of data, and promoting resilient business practice. Okay, just some sense of, yes, of course there's a risk, because it's greenfields. It's a greenfields area. There's always going to be risk, but with the risk, there's opportunity. And these are some examples: the resilience supply chain stuff, insurance and risk management. One of our strongest partners is Marsh, and Mark Pollard is sitting here with us. I'm sure he would have something to say about risk management at some point. ICT companies and platforms. These are also issues that Manuel raised, and this Orbis platform, which will be a resource-based platform for cities. This is what our partnership array looks like today. At the moment, on the business side, some of these companies are already on board in agreements with the program. Others we're talking to, IBM, Ericsson, some of the professional associations of planners, architects, institutes of architects, academia. There is a number of academic institutions here in Barcelona, but also elsewhere. Salford University has its Resilience and Built Environment Institute and their Android network. We have Virginia Tech here. We have a range of other academic institutions that are leading on the research and development side that we'd like to forge relationships with. And then the networks, United Cities and Local Governments, also based here, representing 30,000 local authorities around the world. We have the partner cities that Manuel spoke of around the world. There's a secondary set of cities that are participating in the program, but in a more benign way. And we're looking to launch these tools and have them in the public domain by 2016. This is the current timing. A new idea that's just emerged after discussion with some of our partners is to transform the office that we're opening right now as we speak, waiting for furniture to come, right? To build on the concept of the City Resilience Program and to look at three primary new objectives. One will be building this academic network and utilizing the expertise and skills within academia around the world to help inform this process, but also to externally support organizations, cities, and partners in terms of creating more formal training around resilience, cross departmental, cross-professional type resilience academia. That's the first area. The second area will be around training. We know from the Rockefeller Foundation that likely there'll be 30 to 40, maybe 50 urban resilience experts planted in 100 resilient cities around the world over the course of the next 3 or 4 years. What are they going to do? At this point, we think that there's a fairly strong demand just from there, but also with our partners and new people that we're talking to about wanting some expertise in building resilient strategies, similar to what you've heard Manuel do specifically for Barcelona. But it's a very small population of experts around the world, and it's very dispersed at this point. So training is the second one. And the third is operational stuff. And that's working directly with cities, or working directly with city networks, or that's working with partners who are working with cities in actually implementing programs on developing urban resilience. And this is where we hope to make everything, for everything to conclude and to make it public domain during Habitat 3 in the latter part of 2016. And that's everything I have. Excellent. Okay. Thanks.
Take a seat over here. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate that. Next on our list, I'd like to welcome Ignacio Valero, the Manager of Technology Transfer at the International Center for Numerical Methods and Engineering, or CIMNE. He's also an Associate Professor at the Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya for the past 2 decades, and has extensive experience in various infrastructure fields across Spain. And he's going to talk to us today about the role of prevention in building resilient environments in developing areas. Thank you. Ignacio.
Thank you, James. Okay, Jose. We will refresh the session, and we have only a few words for you. Don't forget that we are coming from a research center, and we are developing new ideas and new concepts and new trends every day, if you want to see in this manner. This one is the thank you of Dan Luis. And this one may be our presentation, if I can arrive it. Well, this is the title of our presentation, Applying Resilience at New Places to be Protected. It seems that some places around the world will be developed in great towns in a few years. Now, these places are conditioned by rules that don't have nothing to be against the major towns we know. For example, our Barcelona, my city of birth, for example, that have all these developments that Manuel or at the same time Dan are speaking about it. And particularly, we speak a few about the case of Tanzania and Mozambique, that are this kind of environments that are places to be protected or to be thinking from the point of view of resilience with a different point of view that we are saying resilience normally. We have, I think, sometimes we have transformed the term resilience in a cool word. Do you know? A word that it's repeat and repeat, and we don't have exactly more times in certain circles, which is the really meaning. The definition of Dan is exactly, but maybe not for all the environments that are possible to think under the rules of resilience. We are able to determine some things about the risks to which we are subjected in urban environments. But are we far from finding effective evaluation of the training we have against these risks? In part, because we have not developed mathematically the problem with perspective enough serious or enough concentrate in this kind of problem, for example. In part, because not occurred that this problem is a cause of maybe systemic innovation, and we address it as engineers or politicians do. Urban environments are imposed on nature, or major urban environments are imposed to the nature, but are surrounded by it and its improvement and improving the perception of life of those who inhabit is a systemic phenomenon. It's the second time. The third with the speech of Dan that the word systemic appears in this session. I was saying that life of those who inhabit is a systemic phenomenon that we should deal with the mentality of Mujica in his famous speech at Rio Congress. We think that if he is saying that when we fight for environment, the first element of the environment is the human happiness, maybe resilient value creation is equal to the appreciation of the environment. It is human happiness. Jose, please, come.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon. I'm collaborating also with CIMNE in international relations of CIMNE, and at the same time, this is in this, for example, in this harbor of the city of Mtwara in southern Tanzania, we are triangulating and putting together other organizations like the Mountain Institute in the US to work on sustainability, and resilience is part of that. In the south, in 2 areas in the Trans-Himalaya areas of Nepal, like Mustang, Dolpo, and in India, Ladakh, where it was a big calamity in 2010. Many people died because of extraordinarily wet monsoon and flooding, which is now the norm. The monsoon is very strong now in the Trans-Himalaya, and it causes very dry area, and it causes floods. This is one of the most magic parts in Africa. It's a piece of Africa surrounded by 2 seas, the Indian Ocean and the Malawi Lake, which is a sea, in fact, sweet water. And then in these cities, in this area, there are some urban settlements, some old colonial towns and cities that are going to grow very much because they have found what is probably the first or second bag of liquid gas in the world. It's been already extracted, starting to be. It's also the Mtwara Corridor development project is going to happen there, a new railway, lots of potential for development, very few people. That's why the elephant was swimming in the sea, exactly there in the Lurio River, a bit down there. And also in Lindi in Tanzania, there are elephants and buffaloes close to the sea, so, and even lions. So in this area with low population, and with national parks, and the Zelu and the Nyasa National Park, the Kirimba Archipelago, cities will grow. Wealth is going to be there. A lot of wealth, so much so that there is going to be probably a tension with the Aga Khan Foundation and other organizations involved in Africa to bring orderly development. So resilience could be playing a big role at the planification level. And that's it. I go back to Ignacio. Thank you very much.
This is the capital of Tanzania. We have here the actual Dar es Salaam, and here more city coming soon. This one is a not very populated area, but the expected is that the population of Dar es Salaam will be the double of actual population in approximately the 10 years from now. And then when we go to the formulation, we go to our core way of work, and we analyze all of these indicators. We have, for example, a formulation for resilience that in this moment maybe is not saying nothing for all of you, but we think that mathematical and actual knowledge about a city resilience, mathematical, I insist, it's practically known, or it's only a bit of we need to develop. And then I answer to me, is this the way to address the problem? This kind of analysis. I don't know. Here we see a formulation which continues to be an approximation. We know that the resilience is not the inverse of the risks as a mathematical development, but the mathematical development is necessary to achieve results that could be evaluated to get objectives more than statistics, for example, that Dan has shown one moment ago. How do we address the problem when the urban environment does not yet exist and we want to preserve it? Also, be systemic and be resilient. Now, we think that is science fiction. But we have some capacities, of course. Estimating risk, for example, as in the case of the earthquake in Barcelona, we are able to mapping this risk and to determine the different scale in the different places of the city. But we are in the place of risk yet. Other capacities, maybe more sophisticated, for example, we are able to do things like that you'll see. This one is the movement applicating the particle finite element methods of a slender of a piece of earth into a mass of water, or for example, the next this one Babar, not our elephant, that we don't know that this one another animation that represents the Fukushima exactly simulation. You can see here the particles. The particles is an real novelty extension of finite element method that are moving into a fluid and with another elements in movement. And we can simulate, for example, this one. If this one is able to play, I don't know why. Well, I cannot show. I see the simulation. I'm sorry, in this case. But we are able to simulate the movement of the particles, the impact over the wall after the fracking of the wall, and how the elements that are in the fluid are moving in every situation of environment in a contour. 1 minute, please. At last, we do not want to stop seeing our friendly elephant taking a bath in the coast near future, Dar es Salaam. We will be less happy if that happens, and therefore the obvious sometimes here about resilience are not at all such. I copy then, and to finish my speech, I copy from my friend Manuel Valdés this sentence. In major scenarios, it's time to act. I think maybe it was time to act, but I add another, and this one is the most important message into this presentation. It's time in this one more city coming soon time to think intensively, to think deeply about resilience, to be happy jointly designing our environment and the urban habitat, like if the preoccupation of about environment or medioambiental questions is the human happiness, maybe the developing of the new towns under the point of view of resilience are also part of human happiness. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's grab a seat. Thank you very much, Ignacio. Finally, I'm conscious of the time, but I'd like to welcome Andrew Smyth, the chair of the Smart City Center of the Columbia Institute for Data Science and Engineering. As a professor of civil engineering and engineering mechanics, Andrew specializes in structural health monitoring, and he's going to talk to us a bit about the role of infrastructure monitoring in assessing and ensuring resilience based on his recent work in New York City. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Que no sabes el mérito que tiene que yo haya hecho esto. No está mal del todo, ¿no? Bueno, no hace falta que me eches jabón, porque sí, pues criticarlo, ¿eh? Lástima de la última animación que no ha funcionado.
I'm wearing two hats. I'm a civil engineer fundamentally. Can you hear me? No.
The front mic should be on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm a civil engineer. As James pointed out, I've been at Columbia for 15 years. But today I'm also wearing the hat as chair of a new center on smart cities, which is part of Columbia's new Institute of Data Science and Engineering. So we still have a, sorry, 1 minute. Very good. So the center is one of 6 centers, which is basically pursuing big data challenges and opportunities. And so this is Columbia's campus right in the heart of Manhattan. So I apologize, but this will be a New York-centric presentation. So it's perhaps developed world, first world resilience issues. The Smart City Center is engineering-centric, but we have partnerships across. It's a large, strong university, so we have partnerships in policy, in planning and business school, journalism, and also with the Columbia Earth Institute to help with natural hazards. And there are roughly 40 core faculty in this center. Now, what I'm talking about in terms of resilience is in the backdrop of a US infrastructure which is in decay. So roughly speaking, we invest about half of what we used to relative to GDP relative to 50 years ago. And so this is widely publicized. This is the American Society of Civil Engineers infrastructure report card, which grossly assesses our key infrastructure elements, and with an average grade of D+. So that's, we've been upgraded from D in the 2009 report. Now, they also assess that the estimated required spending for 2020 is roughly $3.6 trillion. So there's a major change in investment needed. So this is the backdrop under which I do research. So from my point of view, resilience in the background is actually a decaying infrastructure. So while this is sort of an emergent or slow process, but we may then also be subjected to pulses or strong events, hurricanes, earthquakes, and other technological hazards. So I'll focus here on, my talk is primarily, my research is in bridge infrastructure, so I'll talk about bridges first. Then afterwards, some discussion on flood risk assessment in New York City, and that relates to obviously recent Sandy occurrence. And also I'll touch on some work in electrical grid at the city scale risk assessment. So in the United States, roughly speaking, 30% of our bridges have exceeded the 50-year design life that they were originally designed for. So obviously, this is a vital issue. In Manhattan, we're an island, but all of the different boroughs are connected with several major bridges. So while the examples I will show you are on major landmark bridges, the first of which was the Manhattan Bridge that I'll discuss, which has just exceeded 100 years in age. Here's an example. It carries nearly 500,000 commuters per day. So this is pretty typical for the East River bridges in New York City. A lot of that is using mass transit, as you can see. So subway trains cross the Manhattan Bridge on a rather frequent basis. So to appreciate the wear and tear that civil infrastructure experiences, I chose this video, which was posted on YouTube in 2009. And the nice thing about it is it's very, for the non-technical expert, it's very clear how much deformation a bridge experiences. This is a normal day. So this is a stop motion video over a normal day, so no particular hazard, but I'm trying to convey the idea that routine daily wear and tear causes tremendous amount of fatigue loading, in particular, and cycles on each individual component. And so one of the things we need to understand in order to assess our current vulnerabilities is actually what the baseline condition is of our infrastructure today. Remember, it's in a declining condition. So how do we do that? So this is one of the projects that I was involved with in 2008, actually. We take a lot of measurements. So in this case, we were using differential GPS to get very, very accurate dynamic displacement measurements. And we couple that with an array of accelerometers. We could use many other sensors as well. We do radar, interferometric radar, and then in addition, plenty of strain gauging as well. So all of this gives us a very complete picture of a particular infrastructure asset. Just an idea of the kinds of data that we can measure. These are the displacement, and each one of these blips is a subway train passing. So this gives an engineer direct knowledge of how much deformation there would be on a particular element. So this is very, very valuable. So it's data, but if you have a domain expert, that can be used to actually get information, very valuable information. Here we are updating or fine-tuning our mathematical model of the particular infrastructure asset, in this case the bridge, to assess its current condition. So again, these fine-tuned models then can be used to perform simulations. So we can subject the bridge to seismic loading, hurricane loading, whatever you like. But in order to do that, you need to understand what the current condition is. We did the same thing for Verrazano and many other bridges. Verrazano Narrows Bridge is the longest bridge in America. Here's one of the tests we did during the New York City Marathon. So we use this actually as excitation to understand how the bridge performs and in particular how it's going to perform in high wind conditions. So these signals here, while it just looks like junk at this resolution, there's an awful lot of information that can be extracted in a diagnostic sense. So that is my research, but I'm not going to bore you with all of those equations and theories. But combining different kinds of sensor data also has a lot of potential. So we call this data fusion. If you can see, this is a noisy data set, but if you combine other kinds of data, you can actually denoise data, and that's very, very helpful for high accuracy models. One of my colleagues works on a specific type of deterioration of bridges. This is a main cable of the Manhattan Bridge, actually, as it happens, and working on the corrosion problems associated with these critical components. So these are non-redundant components in large structures. And just some maybe scary photos that he provided for me. This is when you unwrap the cable. So inside there are thousands of high-strength steel wires, and you don't know at any given time how many have corroded. Obviously, once they corrode and break, then there's no longer any load-carrying capacity. This is a very difficult problem to repair. Roughly speaking, for an in-situ repair, this is going to cost you $500 million for a typical long-span bridge that we would have in New York City. So in his case, he's collecting the data directly inside the cable. So performing various kinds of environmental sensing within the cable. And it's a challenging problem from an engineering point of view. But he can get then the indirect environmental variables that would lead to the deterioration, so temperature, humidity. Shifting gears, just because I have time constraint and I want to cover some of the work done in the center that is not bridge related, because most of it is not bridge related, I should say. This is an analysis done by a couple of colleagues pre-Sandy, and this is the flood map. This is the red curve here, or the red shaded area of New York City. And they looked at two different scenarios of flooding, assuming rapid ice melt due to global warming. And so the sea level rise associated with that, and that's the yellow and the green shaded areas. And the interesting thing, so this is the 100-year flood. The baseline in the United States is the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the FEMA map, would dictate a 100-year flood. This is the subway flooding that is associated with a 100-year flood in lower Manhattan. And the interesting thing is that this is the 100-year flood plus a 4-foot, so a little bit more than a meter, sea level rise. And this actually happened to coincide with the elevation of the Sandy event, so which had surges around 13 feet. And in fact, this was done pre-Sandy. They pretty much perfectly predicted the outcome that we would have in Sandy. And it's kind of ironic because this station here was just being renovated at a cost of about $500 million. This is South Ferry Station. And as you may or may not know, this was more or less destroyed and had to be rebuilt at a price tag above that, roughly $600 million. Another part of our center, and it actually was a center that existed before we were founded, is the Center for Computational Learning Systems. And I just wanted to highlight some of their work that they're doing, working in tandem with Finmeccanica on building operating systems, basically building management systems, and in partnership with Rudin, which is a large real estate owner in New York City. And the kinds of tools that they have developed, I would say they are less of a research component within Columbia, but more of a technology integration group. And they're doing things like this, like optimizing the energy usage, the heating, cooling, HVAC systems, and also tying that together with occupancy, so floor-by-floor occupancy, which is very, very helpful. In addition, you can tie that kind of information at a building level to the city grid level. So they've also done a lot of risk work with Con Edison, which is a New York City electrical utility. And this is the kind of risk and load that we see on a hot August New York City day when all of the air conditioners are running. But the interesting thing then is if you're running things at the building level and then you look at the sort of street level grid feeder system, you can actually realize that certain buildings become vital. In other words, their draw on the system becomes vital in the overall city network. And so perhaps from some kind of load balancing or incentive pricing, you might be able to adjust behavior. And obviously the idea is then buildings might communicate with one another for this. So just a few messages because we're short on time. I just wanted to leave out there the idea that data and monitoring of infrastructure are key to being able to assess and manage risks, particularly from what I see as long-term deterioration to also sudden hazards. The aging infrastructure issue requires immediate action. I think immediate action was mentioned earlier, but also that the life cycle cost then, we talk about adaptation in this session. To me, monitoring is a part of adaptation. If you don't know what you have and what the situation is, you will probably make ill-informed adaptation decisions. And finally, the other key thing, there's a lot of talk about data in general, but what is absolutely essential is data be converted to information. And so it's very important to have a close connection between the data that's collected and domain expertise. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
We've obviously run slightly over, but we started quite late, so I would like to make sure that we get the chance to ask some questions from the audience and hopefully you've been storing through and sitting through these presentations and storing up some questions. So please do raise a hand if you have a question. I see one going up at the back there. Is there a microphone that's going out to someone in the audience? Can we get a microphone there? I can't quite see the back there, but otherwise we're not such a big group. We can hopefully also hear you. Can somebody get a microphone just to the back right over there? I think there's something en route. And we have another one. We can pass that along to the center middle here right after that. Sorry, maybe we can hear you if you... Oh, there it comes the... Just over there, right? Is that... Oh, I think he's turning it on, but let's... I'm sure we can hear you from here.
The presentations have been very interesting so far. My wife and I intend to visit Istanbul as soon as we can because we want to get there before the earthquake hits. Apparently there's been a series of earthquakes which are moving west along the North Anatolian fault. Who is working on the resilience of Istanbul as a city?
So we have quite a domain-specific question. I'm not sure if anyone here is dealing particularly with Istanbul. While we're thinking, let's also get the microphone across to the center here. There was a gentleman in the middle who wanted to ask a question as well.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. So it's a question for Dan. Well, we are in the smart city Congress. Then, well, we are in the Smart City Congress, and I think that the creation of the Urban Resilience Institute is a very intelligent, very smart initiative. Could you give us a more complete idea of this initiative? You have like a quick description, but can you explain something more about this future Urban Resilience Institute?
So, hearing a bit more about the Urban Resilience Institute and whether anyone has any thoughts on Turkey and any other questions while we're getting that, we can get the microphone going along so far. Just raise your hand and we can get a microphone. We now have someone to share it. But let's, Dan, perhaps you want to tell us a bit about that and whether everyone has thoughts on Istanbul. I've got no idea, but let's see.
Yeah, I don't have any specific information on Istanbul's... Can you turn this up a bit?
Can we hear
Hello?
on the stage?
How's that? Is that better? Okay, I don't have any specific information on Istanbul. However, I do know that they're clearly aware of the track of increasing earthquakes moving up the Anatolia Fault. One of my first assignments with the UN was in the 1998, responding to the 1998 earthquake. And believe me, that was a wake-up call for the rest of Turkey and on the other side of the Bosphorus as well. So I know that they're taking it very seriously. Earthquake engineering in Turkey is at the highest possible technical level around, and these people know what they're doing. Whether or not they're able to afford the mitigation measures, that's another story. I wouldn't want us to recommend you go there before any major damage happens, but I would certainly recommend you go to Istanbul in any event. It's a beautiful city. On the Resilience Institute, Luis, this is a very new idea, and the concept is evolving. As I said, there are these three main areas of interest coming from partners. Now, this was just talking about the CRPP, and they're saying, well, no, but how are you going to put people on the ground? Many people don't know what they're doing. We listen to the kind of technology that Ignacio and Andrew are talking about here. These are very specialized technologies, extremely specialized. And that's not something you see in city governments. So you need somebody who can train up to be able to speak with city governments, who can draw on the kind of expertise that's around the world, that we know that's around the world, and that can connect city governments to people like yourselves or like who are up here on this panel, in order to help them develop their resilience strategy. So that's the one side of it, is training, getting people on the ground who can work with city governments. The second is the research and development. I mean, we're hearing stuff that's coming from CIMNE, stuff that I know you guys are doing, stuff that's coming from Virginia Tech and other places around the world that are studying specific areas of work on resilience. There's no one-stop shop. I don't know that this will ever become a one-stop shop, but it'll certainly be in our interest to make as wide a possible connection to the research and development industry around the world as possible. And then the third thing is actually doing the work, is the technical assistance work and meeting the demand that's coming from cities to work with tools that are already in development, to work with tools that are in development with our partners now from Marsh and from other places. But they don't exist. This urban systems-based approach that's adaptable to any city at this point doesn't exist in our experience and in our research. And consequently, that's the focus of the operational side of things. The cities that are involved with us have made a commitment to become a laboratory within which these tools will be developed and tested and refined. Their commitment to us and our commitment to them is to maintain this feedback loop until these tools are fully tested and ready to go to the public. So that's where it sits. It's not much more than that at this point.
Thank you. I see we have is there a question over here? Yes, it would be great to get a microphone then. I was going to quickly ask Andrew about just the cost-benefit side of things. You talked about the startling cost involved with getting some of the infrastructure renewal programs underway. We've also heard about some of the returns that are potentially possible and why this might be a good investment. Have you done any further work as to how cities can grapple with this challenge and reconcile those two things?
Yeah, I mean, the cost-benefit analysis, I mean, I've looked in, actually it's funny that you mentioned Istanbul. I have done a project actually in Istanbul, more at the building scale rather than the city scale. But the interesting thing about these cost-benefit analyses for mitigation of existing poorly constructed housing stock, for example, is that the value of a human life becomes critical. So mitigation can often be quite expensive to do it properly. And so this is first world solutions. What I'm talking about are economic costs. Yes, there were fatalities in something like Sandy or Katrina, but usually people are focused then on the economic losses, sort of to industry, flow of business. So it's really those equations and the value in which you put on lives lost often make the difference in the cost-benefit calculation. So and that's obviously an unpleasant area to look at, but it's one that one should consider.
Sure, great. We should have a microphone there now for this question. Great.
I might make a brief comment on Istanbul. Since the '99 earthquake, two very important programs have been undertaken. One is a specific strengthening of critical facilities, schools, hospitals, and others, so that there's a very active program. And the other is a somewhat more higher level initiative in the development of the Turkish catastrophic insurance program, which has recognized seismic risk as a component in the insurance process, and these are actively underway. My question really to all of you is, to the extent that we see research underway, identifying risks, mapping risks, and so on, have any of you focused on the problem of implementing resilience, that is implementing change either through regulatory process or other means of changing the physical exposure?
Who'd like to start off?
Maybe I think that the answer to this question have a great component of systemic innovation, because we are not answering or investigating the emotional, the sense of the people, the way that people are showing his perception of resilience, for example, and the tools, for example, that from the time I brought my communication for this Congress to now, we have two European projects centrated in big data. Big data and cloud computing, it will arrive as tools that could be used practically for every people around the world, even for example, in the areas that we show in our communication. And then the combination of these two techniques that will be usual as user friendly for a lot of people, are necessary to analyze this great kind of data and to analyze the resilience answers. We don't have the resilience answers, and don't have the responsible and don't have the responses of the people to the emotional and systemic response. I think the combination of these two concepts maybe is one of the possible answers to treat this kind of problem.
I'm conscious we're lying between yourselves and lunch, and we've run already quite over. If there's any final comments to make, let's perhaps adjourn to the dining area, and we can pick up the conversation there. I'm sure all the gentlemen are around and looking forward to that. But thank you all for your participation. Thank you to the speakers for the great talks. Really enjoyed the session, and please put your hands together to say thank you very much.